Hello and welcome back to a devlog of my game Mimic. In this devlog we're going to talk a bit about how the objective system or the shared objective system actually works inside the game. We're going to talk a bit about the goals in mind for the system and the troubles we had to overcome and what was the ultimate solution to this. In Mimic, players have a shared objective pool, meaning that all the players have the same objectives to complete online at the same time. Know that we have to also keep track of each other's progress as well. So as player A completes an objective, player B needs to see that objective updating in real time. This is important. This is how players can work together to solve the problem of escaping the map. So that led to some problems and how to track that issue. So whenever we're starting out a new system, we need to figure out how we can best identify what are the problems and needs of that system. I needed a way to have something replicated across to all the clients. Now, a standard way of replicating to clients is by using the game state. The game state is a great central location which you can share information across each player. However, there's a slight problem with this. The game state has great flexibility, however it makes it very difficult to track these very specific types of objectives we're trying to do here. The objectives are unique in themselves. They all have different requirements, different expectations from the player, and different things to keep track of. Now granted, we could have made a complex system which makes it more viable for this, and we may still yet go back on that and rework a few things, but ultimately speaking, we have settled on a different method. And the method we've gone for is to basically have the objectives as their own actors. These actors are replicated across to all the clients and are able to share that information across to all the clients too very easily, as a player can just ping one of these actors and see what's up. So in the game we have currently got 6 different objectives the players can have randomly assigned to them during any match. And because the server is one that picks the objectives, it will delete them, and because they're replicated, everyone else will see the same objectives. So here we have an example of an objective in the map, the Icarus map, and it's for when the energy core is depleted. And as you can see, there are several objectives in the map, and each one has a data asset assigned to it. The data asset just keeps track of what the objective titles actually are, so we can display them on the screen, and they all follow the same pattern of having 3 distinct objectives and then finally a completed one. Each objective keeps track of their own asset and their progress they're making towards that asset, and that progress is what's shared across all of the players. So let's take a look inside of the actor here to see what's going on. As you can see, by the way, before we do that, I'm using a text render to help me easily find and identify it in the map without having to play guesswork. I made it a little tool for me to make it a bit easier to see. But let's jump in to the objective. So the first thing the objective does is it has to prepare and then initialize the level. And that's because there are some elements on some of the objectives that changes based upon different circumstances. So for example, after 3 seconds, it's going to trigger the effect and say, hey, to all the cable assets, if it is a cable one, I want you to find the launch controls and deactivate the desk. Okay, so we can't launch anything yet until the cables have been fixed in the control room. And that's important because we need to give it a bit of time for everything to initialize, and then once we're happy with that time, we can then just clear up anything that we want to randomize out, because there may be like 3 or 4 different types of cables to find, but we only want to find one. We just randomize that per level. Same goes for these valves over here. So you can see there's one valve there, there's another one here, and there's another one on the other side of the map. So these valves, it will delete 2 of the 3 valves. Okay, so you randomly at the start of the level. And that's true for all of these. So you can see here, we've got the randomized puzzle combination. It just initializes the objectives for each objective going on here. Now, it's not the most ideal solution, I grant you that, but it works fine for this because we're not expecting to have too many objectives, and it should be following the same sort of pattern each time. So we're not too worried about its scalability in that sense, because it is not going to scale much more beyond than what it already is. It's important when coming up with your game that you identify what are the things you actually do need. There's no need to develop a complex quest system if you don't actually need like 90% of its features. If you're doing something small and simple, keep it small and simple. And that's why I don't like using like these pre-made packs that you find on the marketplace, because they're often bloated and you don't actually need most of that stuff in there. So think about what your needs are, identify them, and start developing around your particular needs in the game. It's still going to be scalable, but scalable in terms of what you want. Once the objective has done that, that's it. It kind of just sits by and waits for things to happen. So when the player does interact with those elements inside the scene, like the valves, for example, let's go to this valve. As they complete the wheel and turning it, we have a look over here, and we will see the objective progress being set up here. And all we've got assigned here is the actor that is assigned to this objective. Okay, and so it just tells that objective actor to progress along the path there. So let's take a look at that and make progress. So all that's doing here is just incrementing our progress integer, and this is happening on the server, so it's notifying everyone what's happening here. And as it goes through, we're adding points to the player who's done it, so we're keeping track of which player is in control. We've made the change, and they get points awarded to them based upon that. I still want to come back to the objectives at some point and maybe tidy them up and make them a bit more efficient, so we can make them usable in other map designs that we've got in place, which do vary up the kind of objectives we can do. So things I want to do with the objective system are basic cleanup, basically. There's a lots of inefficiencies in there that I want to make better. But at the moment they're not a bottleneck, so I'm not too stressed out about them. We can keep them there, not too worried about that. The thing I was mentioning though was that we do have other maps planned, and they will have very different types of objectives, and it'd be nice to be able to use the same system to work for other maps as well, which will require some reworking because they have vastly different game modes. For example, the second game mode is more about like control map, so you've got control multiple areas at the same time in order to leave the map. The third one after that is more like a repo payload type map, and so we need to think about how we can make the objective system work for those two, as that will also save us a lot of work down the road. That flexibility may become useful there, so maybe I'd like to go back to it at some point and maybe do another video and talk about like here's the before and here's the after, and talk a bit more about what changes were made in that time span. But yeah, and that's the objective system in Mimic. And so there's about 6 or 7 different objectives at the moment in the game. The plan is to have more introduced in the project over time, as the game is released. But right now we're happy with the 7 we've got, as you only get 3 randomized at the start of the game anyway. So I hope you enjoyed this look at the objective system inside Mimic, and looking at how we're doing it and how it can be different. I think the biggest takeaway from this is for people to realize is you don't need to make a complex, big, bloated system if you know what you need. Yeah, so don't fret trying to make this big, beautiful system that can work for all sorts of things. I identify what you actually do need, and also identify what your limitations are. We had the limitation of every player must know what the objective is currently sitting at, and that was a good challenge to try and figure out, and that can only be solved right early doors if you are planning ahead and thinking about what your limitations are as well as what your needs are. If you've liked this devlog and want to see more devlogs, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you want to support the channel and the game, head over to patreon.com/Ryan Laley, where your donation will help us get more content in the game sooner, and get the game out into your hands sooner too. So massive thank you to all our Patreon members and YouTube members for their continued support. Thank you for watching. Make sure you are subscribed, and I'll see you all next time. And don't forget to wishlist Mimic.